Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a different kind of mission entirely.
Yes.
We aren't analyzing data or dissecting arguments. We are, I suppose, exploring the language of awe.
Mm.
We're trying to reach into, the deepest dimensions of what people call consciousness to speak of, well, the unspeakable.
And to do that, we're using the words of one particular traveler.
Exactly. Shared across two really potent sources, Bubbling Spring and Nothing to Become. And we're going to attempt to map the sweetness of that ultimate reality they describe.
That's right. And our listener asked us to set aside the mechanics of the struggle, to look past all the shadows and to focus solely on the light that's revealed when that veil drops.
Which is a challenge.
It is.
Huh.
The narrative in these sources, it does begin from a place of intense difficulty, yes, but the focus, the thing that lasts. It's just pure eternal grace.
The sweetness of home.
The sweetness of home. We're trying to paint a picture of that liquid light the author describes. This deep dive is really an immersion into remembrance, into the luminous essence that was, always there.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our task isn't to dissect how the transformation happens, but to distill the raw essence of this white light experience.
And the insight that comes with it.
Right. We're describing not what was left behind, but what was eternally remembered. It's about finding that bubbling spring itself and trying to explain, through evocative description, why it's so intoxicating.
It's the joy, isn't it? The joy of realizing that the amnesia, which feels like a life sentence, this life of striving and lack, was just a momentary curtain drawn before this brilliant, everlasting stage.
Precisely. We're aiming for resonance here, for a feeling of recognition in you, the listener, not a clinical explanation.
We're going to explore what the author calls the foundational connection, this knowledge that was and is not at the same time.
It's a huge paradox.
It is. It's an immersion into a truth so complete that it makes all the prior seeking, all ambition, all fear, all the language we use, it just renders it utterly inadequate. We're trying to translate the frequency of absolute belonging.
And the vocabulary in the source material is it's exceptionally rich. It almost forces us to be poetic.
It does.
The author doesn't just say, I felt loved. They talk about liquid light in one hand, and that lets us push past the ordinary and venture into the truly momentous.
Let's start there then.
So let's begin at that exact moment, the moment the separation ends. The author describes a state of, total cessation, a collapse of the entire structure of the perceived world.
And the perceived self.
And the self,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This wasn't a journey outward to find some new landscape, but a profound falling away inward, a spontaneous implosion. What were the first impressions of that radical shift away from everything familiar, from the very idea of I being separate and bounded?
Well, the initial phase is defined entirely by reversal, by the process of unbecoming.
Unbecoming. I like that. So not adding something.
Not at all. It wasn't about adding spiritual achievement or some new insight. It was the ultimate instantaneous subtraction.
Taking away.
The source recounts that this overwhelming presence turned off the lights, it turned off everything, it stopped time, it took away my sight, it took away the pain.
Wow.
And this is so crucial. The entire apparatus of human suffering and perception, the whole clockwork of the separate self, it just stopped.
Not violently, though.
No, not at all. It's described not as a trauma or some violent separation, but as a complete, graceful halt of the entire operational system. Imagine a highly complex machine instantly realizing it never needed to run in the first place.
That idea of cessation is just so potent because it implies that the I we think we are is entirely dependent on motion, on sensory input, just to exist.
It is.
And this is where the metaphor the traveler used, it really hits home. The self simply melted away with everything around it like a vampire exposed to sunlight.
A perfect metaphor.
If the I is the vampire, what does that say about its nature?
Well, it implies that the self that we so fiercely defend, our ego, our identity, our whole story, was just a temporary, shadowy construct.
Existing only in the dark.
Exactly. Existing only in the absence of absolute light. The shadow needs darkness and separation to maintain its form.
So when the sheer presence of this liquid light arrives...
The structure of the I just can't sustain itself. It wasn't annihilated in some dramatic fight. It was merely revealed to be non-existent in the face of what's actually real.
There was no battle.
No battle. Just the dawning of a reality that the shadow inherently cannot survive.
That makes the vampire metaphor so perfect for the temporary nature of identity. The source notes the diminishing of the I as the presence grew, resulting in a state of nothing but it was everything.
a classic paradox of unity.
Losing everything to gain the universe. So how does the author describe that sensation, being utterly without a self, but infinitely complete?
It's described through fluidity and light. The moment of full surrender resulted in becoming a liquid light pre-existent to everything I had ever known.
Liquid light? That's stunning.
It is, because it bypasses all our normal imagery of solid things. It's not the light of a distant star, which still implies separation.
You and the star.
Right. This is the very essence of liquidity, of malleability, utterly pure, untainted by form or limitation.
It's the energy of pure potential.
A consciousness that flows without any resistance. The awareness that existed before the prism of life fractured it into individual forms and thoughts.
So this liquid light isn't just energy. It's an ancient flowing awareness that comes before matter, before time, before any of our individual lives. And for me, the most astonishing part is that moment of immediate recognition, the familiarity,
Yes.
the profound realization that it was not new. The author says, I knew exactly what it was. It knew exactly what I was.
And that just eliminates the entire framework of spiritual striving, doesn't it?
Completely. If you know what it is and it knows what you are.
Then the separation was just. An elaborate, convincing, but ultimately hollow theater production.
It's a remembrance of the state that existed before the prism of life, before that slowing of vibration created the illusion of boundaries.
And that knowing is so absolute that it instantly reveals the separateness as voluntary.
Which brings us to the other metaphor, the machine.
Right. This shift is likened to the snapping of a band holding a machine together. It leads to a program crash that, well, it reveals the underlying code.
And the code itself is perfect.
It's perfect, complete, and foundational. It's not chaos that follows the machine breaking. It's the unveiling of an absolute foundation, the blueprint of all things, radiant and pure.
It's the end of the argument.
The end of the noise, the dropping of the burden of self-definition, only to find that definition was never needed in the first place. The sweetness lies in the profound relief that the search for truth ends, because the searcher realizes they are the truth they were seeking.
It's the great I am behind the small, struggling I am that we all navigate life with.
And that moment of dissolution, of becoming liquid light, it carries with it an absolute certainty. Not just a subjective feeling. It wasn't a belief, not a faith, not a theory. It was an in-the-moment knowing, raw and pure, that this liquid light was the eternal context for the temporary human experience.
It's the ultimate relief of realizing that, despite how convincing the dream of separation felt,
The reality was always whole, always perfect, and always holding you. The purity of the light means that all the human stuff, judgment, hierarchy, lack, it just instantly vanishes. Only that pre-existent state remains.
So if that first stage is dissolution, what comes next?
The next is immediate, absolute, foundational connection. The author describes the state that replaces that temporary self not as a new location, but as pure, undeniable belonging.
And this is where the sweetness really begins.
Oh, absolutely. It's characterized by the realization that the universe, the source, had never, not for one single instant, let go of its smallest fragment.
And the description, it goes so far beyond just emotional security. It's called a pure hum of belonging. That phrase itself is so evocative. It's like a low, steady, resonant frequency that underlies everything, the cosmic vibration of existence.
And it wasn't something achieved or earned through effort.
Yeah.
It was something instantly recognized that was always there underneath my noise.
The noise being
What?
the striving, the anxiety.
The wanting, the ceaseless definition of the self, all of it. When the noise stopped, the deep hum was simply there, and it was recognized instantly as simply home.
We have to emphasize how radical this is compared to ordinary human emotions.
We do. The author is very clear. It wasn't ecstasy, no enlightenment, no wisdom, no connection.
Why not connection? That seems like a good word.
Because connection implies two separate things, joining, a plug and an outlet being unified. This was foundational.
Foundation.
Nothing wrong, nothing right, simply home. It transcends duality because it's the ground state of existence, the eternal, unwavering context.
And that removal of duality, that's the source of the profound sweetness.
It is.
If it were ecstasy, it would be another ripple, another temporary high. But this is the removal of the need for the itch entirely.
And the source of joy just flows naturally from that. The author notes that tears of joy are sweet even when you think you have none left to give.
Why are those tears sweet? They aren't tears of happiness over some good outcome. What do they signify?
They're sweet because they are the final runoff of the dissolved illusion. They signal the end of the long, painful wandering. The joy isn't manufactured or earned. It's the natural consequence of realizing the separation never existed in the first place.
The body's reaction to the collapse of the false self.
Exactly. And this brings us right to that profound metaphor from the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, quoted in the sources, the realization that I am no longer your master, for you have become drunk from the bubbling spring.
The bubbling spring, that image suggests something inexhaustible, intoxicating, vital.
It's not a well you have to painstakingly draw from. It's an overwhelming, vital fountain that instantly makes you drunk on its existence.
What does that drunkenness mean here?
It implies a state of being fully saturated by the fundamental truth of the universe. A state so overflowing and complete that analysis is impossible and striving is just unnecessary.
When you're drunk from the source, the seeking mind, the master, loses all its authority.
The awareness of home is immediate and saturating. It's an internal vitality that overflows, confirming that the source is closer than your own breath. The sweetness is the shock of saturation after a lifetime of perceived thirst.
And to anchor this feeling of belonging, the author uses that metaphor of the infant and the mother. The baby doesn't have a catalog of memories to justify its connection. The bond just is, raw, pure, and wordless.
It completely bypasses the mind. The baby's connection comes before thought, before logic, before memory. The bond is still there, even if you take away all the external sensations.
It highlights that belonging is inherent, not contractual.
Exactly. The essence of the source is exactly this.
Yeah.
An absolute fundamental surety that, regardless of the chaos and perceived risks of the world, all that noise, the undercurrent, that pure hum, has never shifted.
It wasn't a connection that had to be formed.
It had always been holding me. The only difference was that brief, voluntary moment of remembering.
And that infant metaphor perfectly captures the sweetness. The security is absolute. The deep, deep assurance that you are, and always have been, safe.
And that surety requires no external evidence, no faith, and no effort. It simply is what remains when all the effort collapses.
Okay, so let's move into the quality of the communion itself, that moment of reunion. The feeling was of having been living inside a movie, a really convincing, pressurized drama, and then suddenly the film just stops.
And you get to walk out of that theater into the spring air.
It's the profound relief of exiting the illusion and stepping into this expansive, clear reality.
And this moment of reunion is maybe the most poetically described part of the whole thing. The traveler recounts walking out hand in hand with someone or something that had never once let go.
But the critical detail, the part that speaks to non-duality and the absolute grace of the source, comes right after.
Our hands were not two hands, but one.
That detail is everything. It's not a connection between two individuals. It's a single substance recognizing its own wholeness.
A staggering image.
It is. It means there was never a moment where the I existed outside of the it, despite how overwhelmingly real that feeling of being separate is.
And if the separation was never real, then how did the source communicate this profound truth?
Well, the communication wasn't auditory or even intellectual. It was grace.
The source states, it didn't speak, it absolved.
It absolved, and that is the ultimate sweetness, isn't it? Grace is the total removal of the burden of the past without any need for explanation or justification or even forgiveness.
Because there was nothing to forgive. The whole concept of sin or mistake is entirely contained within the illusion of separation.
In the reality of the liquid light, the slate wasn't just wiped clean.
The slate was realized to have never been marked in the first place. The past just dissolved, along with the identity that constructed it.
And to that stunned human question, how could I have forgotten? You know, a question that's just loaded with self-blame and grief.
The only response felt was simple and wordless, carried like a pulse. I didn't.
Source never forgot.
The amnesia was entirely on the side of the separate self, the character playing the role in the movie. That response carries the weight of eternal compassion and an unwavering presence.
The author describes this as a living death, not reborn, preborn, and complete.
We have to spend some time with that idea of preborn.
Yes.
To be reborn implies a process of improvement, right? Fixing a flawed original state or starting a new spiritual identity.
But to be preborn
is to return to the original, perfect, eternal state prior to the beginning of the individual temporary life. It's before the first flicker of identity, before the illusion of being flawed was even possible.
And complete.
Completion is the absence of any lack or any need for development, a state of perfect inherent sufficiency.
It's just staggering. The source also notes that all prior moments of bliss, every ecstatic feeling, every profound revelation were merely ripples, not the source.
They were echoes, aftertastes, window dressings.
Why? Why were they just echoes?
Because they were desires being fulfilled, which implies a temporary state. There was a prior lack, and there will be an eventual loss. Human experience, even the most exalted, is bound by duality. Pleasure requires the mechanism of potential pain.
But the white light experience...
Was the unveiling of the foundation itself? It was bedrock, the place where the author had always been before the amnesia set in. The difference is permanence. It lacks an opposing force.
The ripple fades. The bedrock is eternal.
Mm-hmm. And this unveiling offered a glimpse at a state of being behind the curtain of this reality.
And the closest conceptual description we find for this unity is the concept of isnotus,
which is a paradox.
Let's slow down and try to unpack that, because it's really the only way language can even approach the infinite. What does isnotus mean in the context of this liquid light?
Isnotus refers to the simultaneous truth that all is and all is not at the same time. In the white light, the traveler experiences total being, infinite consciousness, infinite energy. That's the is.
But at the same time...
At the very same time, the individual personality, the self, the world of forms, is rendered not real, or at least temporarily non-essential. That's the is not.
So the forms exist, but they aren't the foundation.
Exactly. The individual piece appears separate enough to play the game of life, to have ambition and joy and fear, but has never been disconnected from the whole. It's a staggering unity where the logic of separation just dissolves into an overwhelming liquid presence.
So the human self, the I, is necessary for the game.
But entirely optional for existence. The grace of reunion, therefore, is the end of the cosmic joke. The running has stopped. The searching has ended.
The map was drawn on the very terrain you were trying to find.
And the sweetness is the shock of realizing that the journey was entirely voluntary, and that the unwavering presence, the liquid light, was the constant companion, the foundation, the very self of the traveler all along.
And because it was foundational?
It was complete. There was no sense of healing or improvement. This wasn't about getting better. It was about realizing that nothing had ever been broken. The skeleton in the mirror was just the temporary costume, but the liquid light beneath it was eternally whole.
As we move into the final description, the sources suggest that this state isn't just a personal realization.
No, it's the fundamental nature of the entire universe. It is complete, absolute, and perfect, meaning the whole knows exactly what it's doing.
Which directly contrasts with our human tendency toward perpetual growth and improvement.
Absolutely. Infinity, by its very definition, doesn't need to increase or grow. It already is everything. Growth is an illusion of the finite mind observing the dance of form.
And that realization that the whole is perfect and complete, it raises a critical question about the function of striving.
Right.
If the ultimate reality is already perfect, what exactly is home, since it's clearly not a place or a process? The author insists it cannot be described as an experience.
Because experience requires two, the experiencer and the experienced. Home is the singularity before the split, before the dualistic movement began. It's described as before movement, before longing, before the first flicker of identity.
The stillness from which both bliss and chaos emerge, untouched by either.
Imagine the ultimate neutrality, a boundless quietude from which all sound and all emotions spring, yet which is defined by none of them.
And that's the source of the profound sweetness, not because it delivers pleasure,
but because it dissolves the mechanism of suffering itself by removing the illusion of lack.
And the most profound aspect of that dissolution is the collapse of desire. If the self is defined by longing for security, for love, for knowledge, what happens when that longing just vanishes?
In home, there is no hunger there, no thirst, no itch to be scratched.
That is the essence of ultimate freedom and the core of the sweetness.
Even the subtlest longing for understanding, for transcendence, for permanence, it just cannot survive there.
Desire, which is the engine of the separate self.
The thing that drives the entire illusion of separation. It collapses like mist at sunrise. The sweetness here is the utter freedom from need.
Human life is defined by seeking.
And when the liquid light washes through, that longing, the constant wanting, is instantly extinguished, not by force of will, but by a sudden, total, and undeniable satiety. The sense of lack just becomes impossible because you recognize yourself as the whole.
And the image of the canvas encapsulates the eternal nature of the state so perfectly.
Mm.
This eternal reality is the canvas beneath every painting, unmarked and infinite. The canvas remains when all temporary experiences, even the most profound mystical visions, fall away.
Yes.
So if life is the temporary painting filled with vibrant colors of joy and dark strokes of sorrow, what does it mean for us, for the listener, to consciously connect to the canvas while we're navigating our daily painting?
It means shifting your attention from the fleeting nature of the painting, the job, the relationship, the temporary success or failure, to the eternal substrate.
The painting changes, the canvas does not.
And the awareness that you are the canvas, the unchanging, boundless potential, brings an inherent peace and freedom to engage with the painting without being defined or distressed by it. You are the unending, undying stream of potential, inseparable from the source,
The author emphasizes that the point was never to figure it out.
or to become something more. When the search stops, what remains is the eternal familiarity of being unchanging, unborn, and utterly whole.
So the sweetness, the grace, the light, it's not something to strive for or achieve. It's what's left when striving ends.
It is. The author observes that piercing the veil isn't something you do. It happens when you stop doing.
The sheer magnitude of this inherent completeness is maybe the deepest part of the whole revelation.
It's the ultimate letting go. We're all conditioned to believe that transformation requires tremendous effort, discipline, or sacrifice. But this source material, it suggests the opposite.
The effort is what sustains the illusion of distance.
Precisely. The rose doesn't reach to become more than it is. It reaches to experience the light it already is. The awareness of the light is released when the effort to become stops.
You are the rose, already perfect, already saturated with the light.
And all the becoming, all of that is just the temporary amnesia. The sweetness of home is realizing that you are not the temporary creation, but the inexhaustible, eternal creativity.
The ultimate realization, then, is that the problem isn't the distance to home, but the deeply ingrained belief that we ever left it.
The light is not a destination.
It's the very eye you see through and the infinite space you're looking at simultaneously. The freedom lies in knowing that you cannot, by definition, fail to be this liquid light.
So we return to the traveler who saw the skeleton in the mirror, but, could not unsee the liquid light. That brief immersion infected the psyche permanently. It began to burn away the old dark forest of the separate self.
And the lasting effect of the light is that permanent cessation of interest in the things that once consumed the attention.
The magnet of the illusion just loses its pull entirely. Not because those things are bad, but because they are suddenly revealed to be small.
We've spent this deep dive whispering, gesturing, hinting at a reality that words can never fully contain. It is the joy of recognizing what has been humming beneath every moment of your life, that pure hum of belonging that was drowned out only by the volume of your own striving.
The message of the bubbling spring is that you are already infinitely more than you could ever try to become.
And the effort to become less than that is the only source of exhaustion.
Remember the teaching that the kingdom of heaven is laid out before men, but men do not see it. Maybe remembrance comes not from being told, but from recognizing that the silence was never disturbed.
The magnificent noise of the world is just the quietude of infinity briefly adopting form.
And the melody of life is only ever silence playing at being sound.
So we end with this thought for you to carry. If the greatest realization is the memory of home, and home is what remains when all seeking stops, then what small ambition, what small need to become, what small piece of striving can you consciously let fall away today, just to see what grace, what profound foundational sweetness rushes in to fill that now empty space?